Dead Rising 4 is a pathetic, worthless piece of shit. And if by some miracle you happen to enjoy this game, just wait. Just wait. Because I'm absolutely positive that by the end of this video, you will change your mind. So before we dive into the video, let me just explain how we got here, okay? Usually I don't want to make a video about something unless I really feel like I have, something to add to the discussion. And after about 5 to 10 hours of playing this bare bones experience that Microsoft and Capcom Vancouver have the audacity to call a video game, I walked away from a play session thinking to myself, wow, this game is incredibly boring. There's nothing to it. There's no depth. And it feels like they just slapped this thing together in a year. And then I thought, no, they couldn't have. There's no way they only put this together in 1 year. But after thinking about it for a while and doing hours and hours of research on this really cool new website that my friend just told me about called googly.com, I am 100% sure that this game was shat together in just 1 year. Year and a half tops, maybe. So sit back and listen real good. I've got a great case to make, and who knows, maybe you just might learn something. So sometime in January of 2016, the CEO of Capcom Vancouver receives a phone call. CEO of Capcom speaking. And after a moment of silence, he then says something like, "Yes, sir, Mr. Steve Jobs, I'll get right on it." Then he hangs up the phone, pops his head out of his office, looks at his assistant, and probably says something like, "Tell the boys in the cubicles they gotta make another Dead Rising game. And tell them to finish it up post-haste, because it's gotta be done in 12 months. No exceptions." Then he walks back into his office, puts a shotgun into his mouth, and he probably gags on the barrel a little bit because it's in the back of his throat, and pulls the trigger. So normally, to make a decent game, you need about 2 to 3 years of development time, right? This is factual, this is widely known. So to shit out a game in just 1 year, you need to cut a lot of corners. So instead of making a completely new character, they just bring back Frank West, because everybody loves Frank. And then they just turn him into some generic action hero. And, then they just write up some shitty jokes for him, and bing bang boom, you're all done.
You've introduced several characters across the series. Why Frank? Why the decision to go back to Willamette and the mall with the original character?
It was a pretty easy decision. It's a special year for us. It's our 10th anniversary since the release of the original Dead Rising back in literally this month in 2006. So looking at plans to do Dead Rising 4 it was like the gods pointed us to Frank, and it was just an easy decision to celebrate the franchise in a 10-year anniversary way, and also bring back the most loved protagonist.
Oh yeah, that's actually really cool. I can't believe, that's awesome actually.
And then, for the cherry on top, they just put him right back into the same exact town as the first game. Now that is just a wonderful, beautifully, perfectly cut corner. So then, after that, what's the next corner you would need to cut for time? Well, the classic Dead Rising timer, of course. You see, they didn't have enough time to implement a timer for this game, because something like that requires a lot of tuning and tweaking and playtesting, because you have to figure out how long it takes the average person to beat the game, and then they got to put in a little bit of extra time so that you can mess around a little bit, build some neat weapon combos and kill some zombies, maybe complete a couple of side quests. Wait, hang on a sec. Oh yeah, there aren't any side quests in the game. That's weird, isn't it? Isn't that weird? Why wouldn't there be any side quests in this game? Probably because they didn't have time to make any. I mean, there's these random events that pop up every now and then. They tell you to save some random person, and each person you save goes to a shelter that you've cleared out. But after you save 15 survivors per area, that shelter becomes full. So then why would any reasonable average player continue to save survivors after they've already completely filled up that shelter? Now these quests are just random encounters, And they never stop showing up, no matter what. No matter if you've saved 100 survivors, they keep showing up.
I can't take this anymore!
But on average, these little random events, they take about 1 real-life minute to complete. But even then, it really doesn't matter at all. Because at some point in my game, every shelter that I had spent time securing and adding survivors to just didn't have NPCs in it anymore. Every survivor I ever saved just glitched out of my game somehow. So I wasn't able to purchase anything or utilize that portion of the game. And you know, I'm not the only person that's happened to. But as far as side quests go, I guess, if you really want to stretch it, you could consider the Maniacs as a sort of side quest, I guess. But the Maniacs are they're fucking weak. Not only from a gameplay perspective, but from a storytelling and creative perspective. There's no backstory to them. There's nothing interesting about them. And they're just so easy to kill. It literally never took me more than 2 minutes to take out any one single Maniac, as you can see here in this gameplay. And you know why? I'll tell you why. That's a good question. Because the developers didn't have the time to sit down and come up with any creative, challenging, or memorable psychopaths like the previous games had. They just slapped together an evil Santa Claus or some guy in a mascot suit. Someone says, "Hey, I heard there's a rumor. You should go check it out. People be dying." And then you go check it out. It takes you 2 minutes. So to get back to what I was saying, even if there were a classic Dead Rising timer in this game, there aren't any genuine distractions that will keep you from completing the main story. Well, you know, apart from the couple hundred collectibles they sprinkled throughout the map in order to pad out the game's length. And sure, okay, you could argue that in Dead Rising 3, the timer was very lenient and allowed you to complete pretty much everything in the entire game. And even then, you would still have some time to spare. But here's the deal about that, right? Just simply being timed to do something can add a lot of tension to any situation. I mean, think about it. Somebody sits you down in a room. There's a 3-minute timer on the wall, and all you have to do is answer 5 simple, basic math questions before the timer runs out. You have more than enough time to complete this task, but there's still a lot of pressure on you to beat the clock. You know, you don't want to run out of time. So it just adds tension to the situation. So, when you remove the timer from Dead Rising 4, you also remove pretty much all of the tension, even if there are quite literally almost 0 side activities for you to complete. There's also no save system in the game. Probably because it would have taken too much development time to figure out the best places to strategically place all the save bathrooms, so that the game could feel tense, you know, so that the player will feel nervous about losing some of their progress. But like I said, this takes time to implement, because if you've put too many save points all over the map, it removes that fear and anxiety of losing that progress. But at the same time, if you don't put enough save points throughout the world, it may seem a little unbalanced and unfair. Figuring out the best place to put these save points would take a lot of development time, because like I've been saying, they would have had to playtest this game a bunch, beat it several times, constantly tweak and reiterate everything until it felt just right. It takes a lot less time and effort to just slap on an autosave system and call it a day. Here's how I look at it, right? Bathroom saves in Dead Rising are kind of like bonfires in Dark Souls. Could you imagine if for the next Souls-type game, they just decided to remove bonfires, or lanterns or whatever, and just threw in checkpoints and autosaves? That'd be ridiculous. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because even if there were save bathrooms in Dead Rising 4, it wouldn't have mattered one single bit, because throughout my entire playthrough of the game, I never died a one single time. Not a one. The game is so easy. I could just take my Nana's ashes, pour them onto the controller, and she could beat the game for me. Now, why is the game so easy, you ask? Well, that's because they didn't have enough time to actually, balance the game and give us a challenge. Because again, that'd require lots of playtesting, lots of tweaks to the AI, They gotta figure out how much health they should give the player, how much damage zombies should do, how many hits it takes to kill a single zombie, pace out the upgrades. You know, they'd have to take in all this information and a whole lot more to find that perfect balance of challenging and fun. But the gameplay basically just boils down to mash the X button. And sometimes it just becomes a Batman game for a second. Frank West's bat sense kicks in, and then you just gotta, hit Y to counter that enemy's attacks. And sometimes you get into a car, and you hold the right trigger for a long time until you arrive at your destination. And that's it. That is literally the entire game. After you play this game for about 10 minutes, you have seen everything this game has to offer. And it never expands on itself, there's never any tension, you never feel challenged, and there's never any sense of danger. This is because the game lacks depth of any sort. Probably because it only took 1 year to make. You see, they didn't have time to innovate or add any creativity to the moment-to-moment gameplay. They only had enough time to implement 2 new enemy types, the fresh zombies and the evolved... Actually, you know what? I'll just let the studio director Joe Nichols here tell you all about those great, cool, fun 2 new enemy types. Let's go ahead and roll the clip. Take it away, Joey!
We've introduced a whole bunch of different kinds of zombies in the game. So we have our regular zombies, the Horde. We have the freshly infected guys, which are the crazy ones. They're kind of like a little bit like 28 days later. They chase you. They'll climb up on cars after you. You can't just stand on a car to get away. They'll come up after you. And we have a third zombie called the Evo. But the Evo is kind of like a super smart version of a zombie that's got some strategy in it. And they're the smart ones. They manipulate the situation. They let the Horde wear you down. They work in packs. They can jump about 20, 30 feet. They're off the chain, and they're really scary.
God. The Evos are really tough, and they jump around from building to building, and they bark out orders to some of the Horde to get you to defend against them. So it's a bit of a different experience.
Oh, that is not fair.
So as you can probably see from the gameplay I'm showing here, these enemies are painfully easy to kill, and they add no depth or strategy to the game. Taking them out is as easy as mashing the X button. It almost feels no different from taking out a regular zombie. At least Dead Rising 3 had some enemies that shook things up a little bit, It had some cop zombies and army zombies that they would shoot at you, or they'd try to shoot at you. They had firefighter zombies that have an axe. There's football player zombies that charge you and tackle you. But then there's the regular Horde type zombies that become more aggressive at night. In classic Dead Rising fashion. Things like that. There is effort in that game, right? But it's not really fair to compare this game to Dead Rising 3, if you ask me. Because the thing is, Dead Rising 3 took about, 2 to 3 years to make, and it shows. Whether or not you like the game, it does show. I mean, look at the amount of zombies on screen at almost all times in the early game of Dead Rising 3. Something as simple as getting across the street felt really eventful and dangerous. And not only were there a ton of them on screen, but there was a lot more variety and detail on each and every zombie. You could see they're all moving around, they're always doing something. Most of the time, in Dead Rising 4, the amount of zombies on screen doesn't even come close to the amount Dead Rising 3 had. And there are times when Dead Rising 4 does have more on screen. But if you just take 1 second to look at it, most of them are just kind of frozen in place. They're not moving, they're not doing anything, and they all look really samey. There's a lot of orange jackets. You see like a sea of orange jackets, and overall they just lack a bunch of detail. And even killing the zombies isn't as satisfying as killing them in Dead Rising 3. I mean, in Dead Rising, check this out. Look at the way they dynamically fall apart depending on how and where you hit them. Seeing them get ripped apart and sent flying was satisfying, gratifying, and fun multiplying. And in a game that's pretty much all about killing zombies, that's a lot of fun. They nailed it. It feels like I'm causing real mayhem and destruction. In Dead Rising 4, the enemy destruction is pathetic. It looks janky. It looks like crap. It looks like some animator threw it together in just a couple days because he only had 365 days to make over a couple hundred animations. That's what it looks like. And there's only like 5 or 6 preset zombie deaths that you see over and over again. So after playing the game for about an hour, probably less, I'm being generous, I'm a nice guy, you've pretty much seen everything there is to see, and it gets stale real quick. Killing zombies just isn't very satisfying in this game. And when you've built your entire game around that premise, and it sucks, well then you've got a really shitty game. So now let's talk about the upgrades. You can complete the entire game without purchasing a single upgrade. Seriously. The only upgrades that actually benefit you are the ones that increase your inventory slots and the ones that increase your weapon durability. And when your game has 107 abilities to unlock, and only, I'll be generous here because I'm a nice guy, like I said, and only about 10 of these upgrades are useful or have a genuine impact on the way the game plays, well, that's a real problem. Most of the time, I would just have, a big stack of 10 upgrades, 10 upgrade points, and because I wouldn't bother upgrading anything because I didn't need to. It was actually a waste of time to go into the menu and give my character more health. Because from the very beginning of this game, Frank West is very powerful, and at the end of the game, he's even more powerful. In Dead Rising 3, Nick Ramos starts off as relatively weak. Zombies are a real, genuine threat. Things are tense. But this incentivizes you to explore more of the map, to try and find more blueprints so that you can make better weapons and deal with the zombies more appropriately. But as the game progresses, Nick becomes more powerful and more capable, which invests you into the game more because you've gone on this journey with him and you've seen him grow because you made him grow. But that's what happens when a game takes, 2 to 3 years to make. Things just kind of turn out a little bit better. And sure, you could argue that Frank has already been through this situation before in Dead Rising 1 and should already be capable enough to fight these zombies. And yeah, you could make that argument. That's a good argument. But then why is Frank so afraid of these zombies? Let's say that Frank West is the same old Frank we know and love from Dead Rising 1. He would naturally be very powerful at the beginning of the game. The game would be too easy, right? Which it is. So then take this idea. Why not make the zombies more threatening than they ever were before? Why not make all the zombies in the game sprint? Full-on sprint at Frank West and overwhelm the player? Or why not give the zombies new abilities? Like, allow them to open doors. That would make getting away from them pretty tough. Or what if they could drive cars and try to run you over? Or, maybe they could pick up weapons off the ground and try to hit you. Maybe there could be, a big giant buff zombie that picks up other zombies and throws zombies at you and swings zombies around. Who knows? That way, Frank West can start out just as powerful as he was when Dead Rising 1 ended, but he still wouldn't be powerful enough to handle this new threat. That way, as you level him up, he can better meet this new challenge. I think that'd be fun. I think that'd be a good way to evolve the gameplay of the series. I think it makes sense, right? You evolve the zombies, you evolve the series, keep it relevant, keep it fresh, keep it gay.
Keep it gay, keep it gay, keep it gay.
But let's be honest, something like that would have taken way more than a year to implement into a video game. So in case you haven't noticed, Dead Rising 4 is a huge step backwards from Dead Rising 3 in pretty much every single way. So let's talk about that, shall we? I'm going to quickly go through a short list of things here that Dead Rising 4 screwed up, but Dead Rising 3 did better. So, if you include vehicles, Dead Rising 3 had 111 weapon combinations, which is more than double of Dead Rising 4's 55 weapon combinations when you include vehicles. And some of these weapon combos are even reused from both Dead Rising 2 and 3. And graphically, I think Dead Rising 3 looks better. As I said before, it has a lot more detail in its presentation. And sure, yeah, the game's color scheme is kind of dull. I'll agree with you there. But look at how when Nick gets close to a clean window, you can see his reflection in it. You can even see the zombies' reflections in it. But at the same time, you can still see through it to the other side of the window. Now, understandably, this might not sound impressive to you, but from what I understand, it can be somewhat taxing on a game's engine to do a reflection of the player's character model. Since basically what's happening here is the game is projecting another version of the player onto the mirror and is simultaneously copying and reversing all of your button inputs. Which is why when you eventually get to a room in the game where you can see Nick's reflections on 3 different windows at one time, I was impressed. I remember thinking to myself at that moment, oh my god, this is next gen. Now this might seem like nothing to you, and that's fine, but just ask yourself this. When have you ever seen more than one reflection of your player character at any one point in time in any other game? I can't think of any other game that's ever done that. And I know I've spent a lot of time talking about reflections, something that has no consequence on how the game plays, but little details like these can make a game more immersive. They show that somebody over at the studio cared about what they were working on, that they went that extra mile to add in a cool little feature that most people probably won't even consciously notice. Little touches like that give a game polish and make it feel like a more complete experience. Dead Rising 4 has nothing like this. Reflections are non-existent on Windows, or even Apple for that matter, and the windows are so damn clean that on more than one occasion I would just run into them thinking that there was no window there at all. And I know I'm not the only person that's ever done that.
Michael ran through the sliding glass door because he thought he heard the ice cream truck.
Stop it!
I know it's a small thing to focus on, but the devil's in the details, and lack of detail and polish make a game seem janky and incomplete. And trust me, Dead Rising 4 has a severe lack of polish. Enemies and objects consistently float in the air, and this game has the craziest goddamn sewer pipes that you've ever seen. And zombies don't dynamically grab onto your car as you run them over and drive over them like they did in Dead Rising 3. I thought that was a nice little touch, It was fun to see a zombie hanging off your car and ragdolling around trying to hold onto it, in the hopes that it can still try and eat you. Dead Rising 4 just doesn't have anything like that at all. Well, at least not intentionally. And it just makes the whole experience feel even more lackluster than it already is. I mean, just look at this game. Look at it. There's a bus, a magic city bus that you can just clip through. There's no day-night cycle. The AI is fucking garbage. I mean, look. I could just sit in the middle of this pile of zombies and they do nothing, almost nothing to me. Great job. Great job, Capcom. I'm real scared. Yeah, good job. There also aren't any status effects from the food you eat. Like I remember in the other Dead Rising games, if you drank too much alcohol or ate too much rotten food, you would vomit. And there was even an achievement to make a zombie slip on your vomit. There's also no co-op in the campaign. Instead, there's an incredibly lazy, laggy, frustrating, connection-dropping, tacked-on, sorry excuse for game padding co-op mode that you can play with your best buds.
Hey, the new host
Ryan
now.
and Jack.
Yeah. Hey, my game just crashed.
Yeah, my
Jack
game
and
may have
Michael.
crashed as well.
All
But
right.
hey, I'll tell you.
And this game is also the first game in the entire series to not have multiple endings. Because making endings and making games takes a long time, and they didn't have any of that when they made this game. So nothing's in the game. And just take a look at this clip right here. Take a look. I promise you that I didn't make any changes to this cutscene. This is actually how it was in the game. Oh yeah, spoilers, by the way, if you care, which you shouldn't, because the story's kind of average, lackluster. Anyway, let's roll the clip.
But we lost everything. Camera and Barnaby servers are wiped, and
So you see that? Towards the end of the game, several cutscenes would just suddenly drop the dialogue for a couple of lines. A couple of pivotal lines, mind you.
Oh, like the leg? Fair enough. I deserve that.
You see, a game is able to get nice little touches and polish when the developers have the luxury and time to put them into the game. And as I've just demonstrated, they only had 1 year to make this thing, and boy oh boy does it show. Now I'll be honest, there are a couple of things in this game that I did like the mall. I feel like the mall, the environment in the mall, felt fully realized, and it had some interesting areas in it. And I really like the sort of, bossa nova Christmas music. But, I mean, if you're playing this game in June, you're probably not going to want to hear that. If that's the case, too bad. You're just going to have to deal with it. And I also thought that having a big bad zombie in a mech suit was kind of neat. And, after I actually got to the mall and started playing around with the weapons, I was actually kind of having some fun. But after about a half hour, it gets real old, and the game doesn't have anything to offer beyond the gimmick of killing zombies with an electrified go-kart. Now I'll take a step back here and I'll admit that it is possible that they did take more than 1 year to make this game, but instead of spending that time on actually developing the game and fleshing out and refining game mechanics and giving the game some, the extra little polish that it needs, that they just spent all their time on focus groups and trying to figure out how to make a game that is as broad as possible, that's going to appeal to as wide an audience as possible by stripping away any difficulty that the game might have, by getting rid of any and every complex mechanic, cutting out any ounce of depth the game may have had, so that more people would buy it. And that might have been the case.
We do a lot of market research, we do a lot of focus groups, and every single thing that we put in the game, we've worked really closely with our partners at Microsoft, and they've given us access to a lot of consumer research, and a lot of people come in and play the product and have been doing so for months and months and months. Yeah. And we look at all the information that comes in, we try to tailor it to as many people as we possibly can. Sure.
But I genuinely believe that this game was created in just a year. I mean, think about it. Microsoft didn't have very many exclusives planned out for 2016. Maybe they just hit the panic button and made Capcom throw this thing together. But I could be wrong. Maybe because Dead Rising 3 didn't perform very well sales-wise, that Dead Rising 4 had a lot of studio interference, Maybe Microsoft forced them to focus group everything. Maybe some hoity-toity executive had to approve every single decision that went into the game. And that would also explain why Dead Rising 4 is the way that it is. And that's admittedly probably the more realistic possibility as to what happened with this game. But listen, I have spent hours, and I mean hours, scouring the internet, looking everywhere for a hint as to when they began development on this game. And the earliest thing I can find is just a headline from January 2016. And I've watched every single developer interview I could get my hands on YouTube. And all I could find was this.
This what?
You guys have been working on this game probably for at least 2 years now, I would say. It's been about Christmas this whole time.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't confirmation enough for me, because you'll notice that the developer only nods his head. He doesn't outright confirm anything. He doesn't outright confirm that he has indeed been working on this game for 2 years. All he does is nod. A nod isn't viable in the court of law. A nod doesn't fly in a lie detector test, right? And people say if you're lying, you avoid eye contact with whoever you're lying to. And this guy's a pro. Look at this guy. Look at him dodging that eye contact with the interviewer. He looks nervous. He looks afraid. That's because the scam's over, buddy. That's because I busted this whole thing wide open, motherfucker. Take that, you dick. You gay dick! But hey, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I wasn't looking in the right places. Maybe there is some piece of information out there that I missed that proves me wrong. Who knows? Maybe send this video over to somebody at Capcom Vancouver and let's try to get some sort of confirmation from them as to when development of this game began. Let's get some dates, some physical proof. I want to see a line of code or concept art that was drawn up in early 2015. That's what I need. But with how this game turned out, I honestly hope that it did take them a year to make. Because if they did spend 3 years making this trash, then the folks over at Capcom Vancouver are truly shitty and incompetent game developers. And I'll be honest, I really don't care for the Dead Rising franchise. I thoroughly enjoyed the third Dead Rising game. I thought it was good fun. And I personally kinda hate the first 2 Dead Rising games. But I've always seen their appeal, and I've always understood why people like them. They're decent games, they deserve to exist. They shake things up. They used to be a franchise that stood out, and those games have deserved most of the praise that they've gotten over the years. I'm making this video because Dead Rising 4 as a product is disgusting. Whether or not it was made in just a year, or if it was the recipient of Microsoft's behind-the-scenes meddling, Dead Rising 4 is a sorry and pathetic excuse for a video game. It's a massive drop in quality from every other game in the entire franchise. It deserves to flop. And practices like these should have no place in the gaming industry. Everything about Dead Rising 4's existence is insulting to gamers everywhere, and you should be pissed. Something needs to be done about this. But if you still don't think this game was thrown together in just 1 year, I think I got a way to prove this, okay? Let's just wait until E3 or Gamescom. Because Microsoft, especially this year, 2017, they're really hurting for some exclusive first-party games. Especially after the cancellation of Scalebound, right? So let's see if they announce some half-baked Gears of War or Halo spin-off, like ODST 2 or some crap, something like that. Something that already has a completed game engine, when they can just reuse the assets, textures, enemy types, weapons, and character models, something like that. So I'll come back to this topic after Gamescom, which happens in August, and if I'm wrong, tell me right now down in the comments what you think my punishment should be. And if it's realistic enough and not too dangerous, I'll do it in front of a camera and I'll post it right here on this channel. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and give it a like, because it seriously took me forever to make this video. So if you could share it around to someone you know who actually likes this game, that'd be great. Or you could just share it in general, that'd be cool too. Also, you should go ahead and subscribe, because I got some good ideas that I'm really excited about for some more videos that'll be coming out real soon. And lastly, I have been making videos for a website called trueachievements.com. And if you're interested in seeing what I've done over there, go ahead, it's all on YouTube, so go ahead and click on this playlist I've made. It's got all my work that I've put together for them. Put it in the description and I'll put an annotation up right here. But yeah, that does it for me. That's all I got for now, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.